In 1692, the small Puritan village of Salem, Massachusetts, became the setting of one of the darkest episodes in American history. A community bound by religious fervor and tight-knit relationships fell victim to a wave of mass hysteria. The Salem Witch Trials were not merely about accusations of witchcraft. They were a chilling tale of paranoia, manipulation, and the fragility of human trust. What began as a few unexplained illnesses spiraled into a series of accusations that left lives ruined, families shattered, and an indelible scar on the fabric of society. This is a story of fear, of women who suffered the ultimate injustice, and of a community that lost its way. The trials were fueled by deeply rooted prejudices and a fervent belief in the supernatural. They laid bare the dangerous consequences of unchecked power, mass hysteria, and the abandonment of reason. This essay delves deep into the tragic events of Salem, not just recounting the trials, but exploring the emotional toll they exacted on the accused, their families, and the accusers. Salem in the late 17th century was a stark, rigid place. The Puritans who inhabited it believed in a world where God and the devil battled for the souls of humanity. Their lives were governed by strict religious codes, with little room for deviation or dissent. The community was small, bound together by shared faith and interwoven relationships. Beneath the surface, yet, tensions simmered. Disputes over land, grievances among neighbors, and the pressures of survival in a harsh environment created an atmosphere ripe for conflict. Women in Salem faced an especially harsh existence. They were expected to be submissive, pious, and industrious, tending to their homes and families without complaint. Any deviation from this ideal was met with suspicion. A woman who spoke too freely, acted too independently, or failed to meet the community's expectations could quickly become a target of scorn. The seeds of mistrust were already planted, waiting for the right spark to ignite the fire. In the winter of 1692, that spark came. Betty Parris and Abigail Williams, the young daughter and niece of Reverend Samuel Parris, began exhibiting strange symptoms. They screamed, contorted their bodies, and claimed to see visions of terrifying figures. The town doctor, unable to find a medical explanation, declared that the girls were under the influence of witchcraft. This declaration sent shockwaves through Salem, a community already primed to believe in the presence of evil. As the girls' fits grew more dramatic, the community demanded answers. Who was responsible for this devilry? The girls, pressured by their elders, pointed fingers at three women: Tituba, an enslaved woman of Caribbean origin; Sarah Good, a destitute beggar; and Sarah Osborne, an elderly widow who had been shunned by the community. These women were outsiders in a society that valued conformity. Their differences made them easy targets. Tituba's confession, extracted under duress, marked the beginning of the trials. Beaten and threatened, she told the authorities what they wanted to hear. She had consorted with the devil, and others in Salem were witches. Her words unleashed a torrent of accusations. Neighbors turned on neighbors, old grudges resurfaced, and fear spread like an uncontrollable plague. The accused were subjected to grueling interrogations. Their every word, every expression was scrutinized for signs of guilt. For women like Sarah Good, poverty and desperation were equated with sin. For Sarah Osborne, her unconventional lifestyle and defiance of social norms made her suspect. The accused were stripped of their humanity, reduced to symbols of a community's collective fears. The establishment of the Court of Oyer and Terminer in May 1692 formalized the trials. The court relied heavily on spectral evidence, claims that the spirits of the accused had appeared to torment their victims. This evidence, impossible to refute, became the cornerstone of the prosecutions. Judges like Samuel Sewell and William Stoughton presided over the cases with an air of divine authority, convinced that they were rooting out a grave evil. The accused faced impossible odds. Those who confessed to witchcraft were spared execution but were forever marked as witches. Those who maintained their innocence were sentenced to death. For many, the choice was a moral and spiritual quandary. To lie was to betray their faith. To tell the truth was to face the gallows. The trials became a spectacle. The courtroom was filled with the anguished cries of the accused, the dramatic testimonies of the afflicted, and the grim pronouncements of the judges. Families were torn apart as children testified against parents, and friends turned on one another. The air was thick with tension, as no one knew who might be accused next. By the summer of 1692, the trials reached their tragic crescendo. Bridget Bishop, a woman known for her outspoken nature, became the first to hang. Her execution set the tone for the months to come. Rebecca Nurse, a respected elderly woman, was hanged despite a petition signed by dozens of her neighbors attesting to her good character. Her execution was a turning point for many in Salem, as it became clear that innocence offered no protection. Gallows Hill became a place of despair. Each hanging was a public event, drawing crowds who watched in uneasy silence. The accused marched to their deaths with dignity, refusing to admit to crimes they did not commit. Their prayers and final words lingered in the air long after their bodies were cut down. By the fall of 1692, the hysteria began to fade. Accusations had spread to prominent members of society, including the governor's wife. The absurdity of the trials could no longer be ignored. The court was dissolved, and the remaining prisoners were released. But the damage was done. 20 people had been executed, and many more had suffered imprisonment and ruin. Salem struggled to move on. Families mourned the loss of loved ones, and the survivors bore the scars of their ordeal. The community was haunted by guilt and shame, a stark reminder of the consequences of fear and blind obedience. The Salem Witch Trials remain a cautionary tale about the dangers of hysteria, prejudice, and the abandonment of reason. They show us the devastating impact of fear on a community and the resilience of those who stand against injustice. The women of Salem, stripped of their dignity and their lives, deserve to be remembered not as witches, but as victims of a society that failed them. Their stories remind us to question authority, to value compassion over suspicion, and to protect the most vulnerable among us.